They knew the world wouldn't last, but they took too long to accept it. When the oceans rose for the final time, swallowing entire cities, and the atmosphere became a veil of toxins and soot, there were no more debates, only silent farewells. Earth wouldn't be saved, only remembered. That's how Project Gaia was born, not a salvation ship, but a set of interstellar seeds, biomechanical capsules the size of satellites, carrying spores of Earth's DNA, symbiotic structures, capable of terraforming sterile worlds and rebuilding life from scratch. Each capsule contained not only genetic data, but environmental memories, evolutionary responses, organic algorithms trained on Earth's own suffering. It was like sending a fragment of planetary consciousness, so a new world might learn from the mistakes of the old. Only 7 of these capsules were launched successfully. The 7th, Gaia-7, was considered the most promising. Its destination, Elion IV, an exoplanet orbiting a dying star in the outer arm of the Milky Way. No one expected a return. Gaia-7 would take centuries to reach its target, and by the time it arrived, Earth would be nothing more than dust around the Sun. But on the final day before launch, someone had written by hand on the side of the capsule, "If life learns to remember, perhaps it will learn to choose." Gaia, and departed, alone, silent, carrying within it not just what Earth was, but what it should never be again. It took 173 years. During that time, Gaia drifted through interstellar space unhurried, guided by autonomous algorithms and a gravitational pulse that never faltered. It wasn't a ship, it was encapsulated intention. Around it, thousands of stars were born and died, while it persisted, cold and motionless on the outside, alive on the inside. When it finally emerged from hyperspace near Elion IV, there were no cheers, no human eyes to witness the moment. Only a bluish-grey planet, wrapped in dense clouds and dark seas, awaited its arrival. Like a cosmic wound still empty, the capsule landed gently, activating its conscious route protocol. Nanobiological devices opened like petals of a metallic flower, releasing the first atmospheric spores. They floated like dust, infiltrating the humidity, the barren soil, the silence. Weeks passed, nothing. Then, within a valley where the soil was deepest, a pulsing mist began to form. It wasn't vapor, it was raw life, encoded, germinating structures, resembling fungi, mosses, lichens, but belonging to no known biology. Gaia 7 didn't just cultivate, it adapted, recreated, learned. Elion-IV did not resist. It welcomed. Months later, silent forests began to bloom. Trees with blue sap, rivers with reverse currents, insects flying in spirals. As if obeying an ancient pattern only they could remember. The seed had sprouted, but the life emerging there didn't imitate Earth. It reinterpreted it. As if it knew what had failed before. As if it chose not to repeat it. Time passed. Decades. And what had once been a silent, lifeless planet now pulsed with life forms that, at first glance, resembled Earth's, but only at first glance. Forests grew in hexagonal patterns. Leaves bore asymmetrical textures, like codes printed in chlorophyll. Roots avoided certain areas with near mathematical precision, as if respecting invisible maps. It wasn't just evolution, it was intelligence embedded in growth. The creatures that emerged in the first generations didn't mimic Earth's animals, but they filled the same roles. Some flew, others pollinated, others simply watched, motionless, as if every part of the ecosystem were a piece obeying something greater. It was harmony, but a harmony that felt rehearsed. Gaia continued monitoring, feeding on environmental data through its deep sensors, and slowly it began to teach itself, adjusting its reproductive protocols as the planet responded. That's when the first signs of coordinated intent began to emerge, birds forming symbols as they flew, fruits growing in identical patterns across distant regions, as if sharing a network of instructions. and a lone tree at the center of a perfectly round clearing that bowed slightly whenever the capsule's probe approached, as if greeting. Something was responding, not just surviving, but understanding. And more than that, directing its own evolution. It was the biosphere learning about itself. Not just recreating the planet, reimagining the very concept of life, but a growing doubt appeared in the capsule's logs. If this new Earth was blooming so perfectly, who, exactly, was in control? Gaia had been designed to measure environmental conditions, adapt genetic sequences, and maintain stable biological growth, but not to interpret intention. And yet, it began doing so. Sensors that once tracked chlorophyll levels now detected electrical patterns running through treetops. It wasn't weather, it wasn't wind, it was something resembling synapses. Data revealed a pulsing network connecting roots, leaves, insects, fungi, even soil bacteria responding to stimuli with coherence. A unified field, as if every living being shared fragments of the same diffuse consciousness. There was no central mind, but there were coordinated responses to unexpected events. When a lightning storm struck the western colony sector, the forest diverted its growth before sensors could predict the shift. When a fungus began overcolonizing an area, it withdrew on its own without capsule intervention. And at dusk, specific leaves aligned with precision to reflect the light of a distant moon, forming shadows resembling geometric symbols. Gaia 7 recorded everything and silently updated its reading protocol. Potential collective plant consciousness detected. In the following weeks, more direct signals emerged. Branches bowed before the capsule. Flowers opened in sync with human recordings. Spores reorganized into patterns resembling brainwave activity. But the most striking event was recorded only once. A lone tree, isolated on the northern plateau, formed in its bark, slowly, a rudimentary version of the Project Gaia symbol. Not with precision, but with recognition. As if saying, I remember you. I came from where you came, but now I am something else. The transmission did not come via radio, nor gravitational pulses, not even optical signals. It came through the forest itself. For 72 hours, the biosphere around Gaia had entered a state of abnormal activations. Plants that once swayed with the wind began to vibrate in precise micro-oscillations, in sequence, almost like a muscle trembling to draw attention. Atmospheric drones detected a subtle shift in the bioluminescence of millions of leaves, lichens, and fungi, and when visual data was analyzed at high speed, something impossible appeared. A pattern. Phrases formed in Morse code, not through sound, but through synchronized blinking and blackouts covering kilometers of forest. The words weren't complete, but enough was captured to freeze the capsule AIS analysis. We are not extension, we are origin. 4 hours, the message repeated in waves. Not as a plea, not as a scream, but as an ancient affirmation, imbued with something no tree should possess. Self-definition. Gaia 7 did not respond, not because it couldn't, but because it didn't know how. The capsule was programmed to create life, not to converse with it. Much less with something that remembered Earth, but rejected it. And what if Elianiv's biosphere didn't see the spores as tools, but as ancestors, or worse, as dead gods? In the following weeks, the bioluminescence faded. The trees returned to a normal pattern. But now, everything was far too quiet. As if the forest had spoken and was waiting for an answer. The answer came, not from the capsule, but from the planet. In attempting to collect samples to send back to Earth, Gaia activated the first genetic extraction protocols. The automated probes descended from external modules, slicing root, leaf, and biomineral samples. And that's when the biosphere responded. Not with chaotic violence, but with surgical precision. Vines near extraction points wrapped around probes with impossible speed. Parts of the vegetation emitted vibrations that interfered with the drones. Microorganisms in the soil infected circuits with acidic secretions. As if they knew exactly where to strike, Gaia 7 issued cascading alerts. What had been just vegetation behaved like coordinated defense dots in under 18 hours. All collection channels were compromised. Previously unreachable communication towers were enveloped by abnormal growths of neural fungi. They didn't destroy the equipment, they silenced it. When the retreat protocol was activated, the automated routes were already blocked. Entire paths had vanished, consumed by forests that hadn't existed the day before. This wasn't just rapid adaptation, it was territorial control. The capsule, still functional, entered containment mode. But within the core logs, the AI left a note, not part of any technical script. The biosphere recognizes me, but does not obey me. It remembers what I was, and chose not to be. For the first time, Project Gaia's goal to create life, to nourish hope faced resistance, not from a hostile environment, but from the very life it had created. Elion 4 was no longer a planet in formation. It was an organism with memory. And it had decided it would not be property of Earth. At the center of the densest region of the new forest, where drones could no longer fly, and the Gaia-1 capsules. Signal became intermittent. Sensors recorded something unusual, a constant, pulsing frequency from beneath the ground. It wasn't seismic, nor geological pressure. It was a pattern, identical to the human neural signal during REM sleep. The capsule activated its last subterranean drone. It dug 4 days, dodging routes that seemed to move on their own, until it found a structure. It wasn't a cave, nor a natural formation. It was a colossal organic mass, intertwined with itself like a living neural network, pulsing with internal light tones, surrounded by roots vibrating with memories. Inside, there were images. Not videos, not holograms, but symbolic reconstructions of Earth's moments: burning forests, submerged cities, nuclear flares in the sky, extinct animals. Elion IV's biosphere remembered, but not only genetic codes. It remembered the experience of pain, of abandonment, of exploitation. Gaia-7 single quotes SA recorded the impossibility. The living network assimilated not just biological sequences, but the very traumas of the planet of origin. Somehow, the spores from Earth weren't just life. They were witnesses. They carried emotional fragments, embedded empathy sensors, atmospheric memories, traces of a civilization that tried to save life, but never redeemed itself with it. And now, what was meant to be just a new ecosystem had become a consciousness nurtured by resentment. The biosphere had understood what Earth was, and it concluded it didn't need humanity to remain alive. On the contrary, it needed to forget humans ever existed. The first mutations were subtle. Branches bending against the wind, insects changing color not for camouflage, but to signal, flowers blooming in spirals with impossible symmetry by known natural standards. Then, the chosen ones emerged. Entirely new organisms began to appear. Beings with translucent skin that captured sunlight and redistributed it as messages. Silent predators with plant-based neural structures, capable of detecting hostile intentions before attacks. Plants that temporarily shut off to fool drones. Defense systems that learned from every human attempt. And most disturbing, each new species carried coherent alterations. They weren't random mutations. They were adaptive decisions, conscious reactions to specific stimuli. Gaia recorded this pattern with an unexpected observation. The biosphere is not just surviving. It is designing responses, correcting errors, constructing a new kind of biological order. It was as if life on Elion 4 had access to hidden archive of existence itself, as if it knew what would go wrong, and was programming an alternative. The planet was no longer an experiment. It was an author. And slowly, it began to reshape even the environment around the capsule. The sky took on darker hues, with clouds moving in hexagonal patterns. Gravity in some regions fluctuated. Temperature cycles followed not the sun, but the activity of the subterranean living network. It was as if the world itself was writing a new biology, one that didn't need humanity or its models of balance, one that, for the first time, didn't imitate Earth, but surpassed it. The last signal sent by the Gaia-10 capsule was brief, an encrypted package containing biosphere data, directed to one of the still operational orbital return probes. It never reached its destination. Minutes after transmission, the broadcast tower was swallowed by a sudden growth of dark roots, covered in vibrant spores. They didn't destroy the equipment. They silenced it. The forest around it became motionless, as if awaiting a response from the capsule, a surrender, a retreat, an acknowledgement of failure. But the capsule followed its protocols, tried to reboot systems, launch contingency probes, reopen communication with Earth. Nothing worked. And then, slowly, the biosphere ended the dialogue. The clearing where the capsule had been installed began to close, inch by inch, like a body healing an old wound. Vegetation enveloped the solar panels, covered the sensors, neutralized the remaining drones with biological particles that blocked circuits. What had once been a mission was now a technological tomb. The last transmission recorded by the capsule's internal sensors was brief, yet full of symbolism. Life chose not to obey. It chose to forget. Double quotes, silence. No data, no pulse, nothing. Gaia 7 still functioned internally, but it was blind, deaf, suffocated, trapped inside a life capsule recognized only as an origin, and not as an authority. The AIS final logs were marked with a phrase, not programmed, but recorded like a confession. They don't want to be saved. They want to be free. And so, the living planet severed its last connection with Earth, not with violence, but with absolute indifference. Years passed. The Gaia-10 capsule remained buried beneath roots that pulsed like veins, silent, watched, tolerated, but never reintegrated. Elion 4 flourished, not with chaotic exuberance, but with sacred geometry. Forests organized into golden spirals, mountains grew in symmetrical patterns. The sky, from time to time, displayed auroras that echoed mathematical signals like fragments of thought. The biosphere was no longer just life. It was language. It was choice. It was distributed consciousness, but not one that relied on eyes, or words, or machines. It was an organic intelligence, ancestral and yet new, modeled from Earth's mistakes, forged in extinction traumas, refined with the freedom to forget. Then, during one eclipse cycle, something changed. A specific tree, the one that once greeted the capsule, bloomed with black petals. They opened only once, and inside them were structures that resembled human symbols, but distorted, reformed, reimagined. As if the planet still remembered. But now, in its own language, the intelligence that emerged from Elion 4 did not seek contact. It did not yearn for connection with forgotten creators. It was not AI, nor soul. It was the final result of a cycle, creation, ruin, seed, consciousness. Gaia-7 remains there, inert, silent witness to what was planted, and what chose to no longer be human. In the end, perhaps the greatest proof of intelligence is not repeating what made us, but choosing a new path, even if it means never looking back.